Okay, so David still does not trust King Saul, even though twice now Saul has admitted to David, I have no reason to be chasing after you. You're not a threat to me, or not a threat to my life. But David is, however, in Saul's mind, a threat to his kingdom. And so as time passes, Saul is going to come around and say, okay, David is the enemy. I need to kill David. I need to keep pursuing him. And so David knows Saul is going to do that. So in order to be safer, David goes to the Philistines. And he ingratiates himself to Achish, the king of Gath, who comes to believe that David wants to be a Philistine, as it were, right? David's on our side now. He's defecting to us. And David has no intentions of actually becoming a Philistine and being a traitor to Israel. He's just going there for his safety, but he is going to give Achish this impression, hey, I'm on your side, okay? Now, in chapter 27, Achish gives the city of Ziklag to David and to all of those who are with David, which I said on Wednesday might be upwards of 2,000 or 3,000 people, right? We've read about 400 people who joined him, and then it became 600 men, fighting men, servants, soldiers who joined him. Well, but might those men be married? Might they have children? Might they have families that they're with? So the people that are with David, it's not just 600. It's perhaps a larger group than that, and it's only going to grow, as we will see in just a moment. So the city of Ziklag is given to them, and I want you to see on this map the areas that we're talking about, okay? So Ziklag is down here, right here, just on the western edge of the Philistines' territory. That's the city that was given to David. Now, David has gone out among the Amalekites and among others, and he has gone on raids and taken spoil and plunder, and he is accumulating all of this wealth. And it seems that, again, Achish of the Philistines is thinking, hey, David's doing this for us. He's doing this for me. He is showing his loyalty to me. But that's not what David is actually doing. Now, Joe provided some pictures here about Ziklag and what you see there called Tel Ziklag. A tel is basically just a mound that is the covered remains of ancient cities, okay? And so when you see T-E-L and then the name of a city, or maybe there's two L's sometimes, depending on who is writing it, that's what we're talking about. It's the built-up remains of an ancient city. And so this is Tel Ziklag, those remains of that ancient city. And archaeologists have done some work there, and they've recovered some things from that ancient city where David was. Now, let's go over to 1 Chronicles chapter 12, and let's look at some things that are said there. 1 Chronicles chapter 12. The first 10 or 11 chapters of 1 Chronicles are a little bit difficult reading. It's just a lot of names, okay? And so we tend to skip over chapters like that in the Bible. But I want you to see in 1 Chronicles 12 and verse 1, and you'll see why we're shifting here to Chronicles. These are the ones who came to David at Ziklag while he was still restricted because of Saul the son of Kish. And they were among the mighty men who helped him in war. Okay, so you see the obvious connection to 1 Samuel 27. When David is establishing himself in the Philistine city of Ziklag, while he is there, and he is, as this verse says, restricted because of Saul's movements and chasing after him, David's posse grows. More and more people will come to David while he is there in Ziklag. And of these, it says in verse 2, that they were equipped with bows, using both right hand and the left hand to sling stones and to shoot arrows from the bow. They were Saul's kinsmen from Benjamin. Okay, couple of things to note from verse 2. First of all, some of the people who come to David are of the tribe of Benjamin. That's Saul's tribe. Even among Saul's own people, their loyalty is shifting to David. That's important to notice. Second thing that I want you to see in verse 2 is that this is not just some random group of people that's coming to David. What was the detail that was included in verse 2 that's interesting to note? They're ambidextrous fighters, okay? Now, how many of you can write with your right hand and your left hand? I mean, just as well with your left hand as you can your right hand. Probably not very many of you. Now, you could write beautifully with your right hand, but then you try with your left hand, maybe you could struggle, right, and make out some letters and you could read it. But chances are pretty good you're lying if you tell me that your left hand is just as pretty as your right hand. I know I certainly couldn't do that. Now, I throw a baseball, a football. I'm left-handed, okay? I could throw at one time, not anymore. I could throw a baseball for 6 miles, okay, with my left hand. With my right hand, right, I'd throw it 32 feet, okay? I was not ambidextrous when it came to throwing. None of us are, unless we work really, really, really hard at it, okay? These warriors are just as good with their weak hand as they are with their strong hand. Okay, obviously that's going to become very important for David as we move ahead. These are not just privates who have just joined the ranks, who don't know anything about anything. No, these are skilled warriors that are coming to fight with David. Did I use that correctly, Alan? I'm not a military man. Privates who've just joined the ranks. I mean, that's like the lowest level, right? Yeah, okay. I'm not a total noob when it comes to things like that. All right. These are the ones who are from the tribe of Benjamin. Their names are given in verses 3 through 7. We're going to skip over that. I want to point out a couple of things from this chapter, though, in addition to verses 1 and 2. Look at verse 8. From the tribe of Gad, there came over to David in the stronghold in the wilderness mighty men of valor, men trained for war, who could handle shield and spear, and whose faces were like the faces of lions, and they were as swift as the gazelles on the mountains. Whoa. Okay, put that in your own words. How would you describe these warriors who have come from Gad? Very fast, great runners. What else? Ferocious. They're mean. They're hungry. Okay, their faces like the faces of lions. Again, I'm just reinforcing this idea. These are not, painters and artists who know nothing about war who are coming out to David. These are men who could destroy you very quickly. Okay? All right, look at verse 16. Then some of the sons of Benjamin and Judah came to the stronghold to David. David went out to meet them, and he said to them, if you come peacefully to me to help me, my heart shall be united with you. But if you betray me to my adversaries, since there is no wrong in my hands, may the God of our fathers look on it and decide. And the Spirit came upon Amasai, who was the chief of the 30, and he said, we are yours, O David, and with you, son of Jesse, peace, peace to you, and peace to him who helps you. Indeed, your God helps you. Then David received them and made them captains of the band. These people that are coming to David and joining his ranks, these are skilled, qualified, faithful soldiers. That's what I want to emphasize, okay? And they came to him while he was in Ziklag, feigning loyalty to the Philistines. But David's ranks are growing, and we're going to see why that's important as we move ahead. Lance and then Glenn.
Just a small note, verse 14, it says the least of those sons of Gad was over
They're men of experience, right? Yeah, good. Glenn?
I was going to question that. Mine says the least was equal to 100 and the greatest equal to 1,000. I wonder if they were commanded that many or if they were that good.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I got you. I don't really have a comment on that, but that's an interesting question. Yeah. Either way, it's a good situation to have, right? Okay, good. Anything else about 1 Chronicles 12 and these people that are coming to David? Okay. All right. Now, let's go to 1 Samuel 28, and let's talk about the thing that all of you are just itching to talk about. 1 Samuel 28, this is the strange and fascinating story of the witch at Endor. Oh, hey, before we get to that, I forgot about this slide. Okay, so we need to talk a little bit about some of these places. We mentioned Ziklag, which is down here at the bottom. Let me stand up here so I'm not blocking anybody's view. Ziklag down here at the bottom, that's where David is. All right? Now, the Philistines are up here in Aphek, which is Phoenician territory. Why are the Philistines up there? Wait a minute. The Philistines, they live down here. Why are they so far up here? What are they doing? You think they're just on vacation? What do you think? Why would they be doing that? Why would the Philistines be up here preparing themselves to presumably mount an attack on the Israelites? Well, chapter 29 is going to answer that. Okay, that's why they're up there. The story in chapter 29 tells us. But just think about this. And Sarah, I'll come to you. I think it was Sarah's hand that was up. What has King Saul been so busy doing for a long time now? He's pursuing after David. He is so consumed with David, David, David. Don't you know that the Philistines saw that as an opportunity to take advantage? Hey, Saul's distracted. Israel is vulnerable because their king is distracted with something else. And I'm sure Saul had seasons where he was focused. Oh yeah, I can't forget about the Philistines, okay? But then he has these moments where he just goes completely in pursuit of David. And you know the Philistines had to be taking advantage of that, especially when Achish thinks David, a leading man in Israel, is on his side. Now's a good opportunity, right? Okay, Sarah?
Regardless of how they see, whether they're looking for the chink in the armor, they're looking for the distraction so they can get in while Saul's distracted, it's just until David gets in that role and can strengthen Israel, all they see is opportunity. So,
yes. Yeah, okay. Good, good. It seems to be something like that. It's a strategic thing. Yeah, in chapter 29, the first few verses are going to talk about that, and the lords of the Philistines, the leaders of their armies. It seems to be some kind of strategy. I don't know if it was that specific one, but yes, it does seem to be something related to their strategy. Now, Saul is at Mount Gilboa, which is right up here near Jezreel, and so he's close, relatively, to where the Philistines are encamped. Now, this witch that we're going to read about in chapter 28 is right here in Endor. She's right here close by. Okay? So Saul, Philistines, the things we're about to read in chapter 28 and 29 are happening up here. David has been down here, although in chapter 29, David is up here. Because the Philistine military leaders see David and they say, why is he here? We don't want his help. Send him away. And David actually does not participate in that battle, but he has moved. Perhaps King Achish has called him up to the northern part of Israel to help fight, but we'll talk about that when we get to chapter 29. Just wanted you to have some geographical whereabouts to help you understand where some things and some people are. Now, chapter 28. Saul knows that battle is approaching. If you look at verse 1, it came about in those days, the Philistines gathered their army camps for war to fight against Israel. And Achish said to David, Know assuredly that you will go out with me in the camp, you and your men. Based upon the men that we just read that David has at his disposal, wouldn't you want them fighting with you? Right? Achish thinks David is loyal to him, and he's got these ambidextrous stone slingers and spear throwers who are just as good with the left hand as they are with the right. Maybe we should get David and these thousands of guys to come with us. Okay? Now, verse 2, David says, very well, you shall know what your servant can do. So Achish said, very well, I will make you my bodyguard for life. Okay, obviously Achish trusts David. David is working something here, but David says, you know what I can do. You know what my men are capable of. You've seen us, hit soda cans from 1,000 feet away with a stone. You've seen that. So, verse 3 reminds us, Samuel was dead, and all Israel had lamented him and buried him in Ramah in his own city. That's a reminder of something we've already seen, chapter 25 and verse 1. Samuel's been dead for a while, but there's two reminders that are given to us here in this verse. The first one is Samuel is dead. Therefore, Saul cannot go and talk with Samuel in the way that he used to do. But there's something else that we're reminded of, though the record doesn't tell us about this previously. Verse 3, it says, and Saul had removed from the land those who were mediums and spiritists. Saul had removed. It's in the past tense. Sometime previously, Saul kicked out of the land of Israel all of the witches and the spiritists and the mediums and the conjurers. I don't know when he did it. I'm not certain as to why he did it, other than the law of Moses said don't have anything to do with such people. But we've already seen with King Saul, he's not all that concerned about obeying the Lord, right? So I don't know why he did that, but let's give him the benefit of the doubt. But for whatever reason, and whenever he did it, he did it. And we're reminded of that here, obviously because of where the story is about to go. So the Philistines are ready to fight. In verse 4, all of Israel is camped in Gilboa. Saul saw the camp of the Philistines, and he was afraid, and his heart trembled greatly. And when Saul, verse 6, this is important, when Saul inquired of the Lord did not answer him, either by dreams or by Urim or by prophets. Okay, I want us to think about that for a minute. That is why we're reminded in verse 3 that Samuel is already dead. So Saul can't talk with the Lord through Samuel as he has done before. He tries the Urim and the Thummim, but that doesn't work. And God's not speaking to him in a dream. Whatever Saul wants to use to inquire of the Lord, God is not answering him. Now, think about two things with that. One related to the story, and then another one, something practical for us to think about. First thing, related to the story. Do you remember, I wrote down the reference here. Do you remember back in chapter 22 and verse 23, we read about Abiathar, the priest? Abiathar was the one who escaped from the city of Nob. You remember when Doeg, the Edomite, at Saul's instruction, killed all the priests there in Nob? Okay? Abiathar escaped, and he came to David for safety. And in chapter 22 and verse 23, the last time we've seen Abiathar is when David invites him to join his company, and David says, I'll protect you. This is an assumption that I'm making, but there's nothing in the text that makes me think something else. Abiathar is probably still with David. And when David wants to inquire of the Lord, he has Abiathar. He can do that because the priest is with him. Point being, Saul can't go to Abiathar like David could. Okay? So who is Saul going to go to? And the problem is, no matter what he does, God is not speaking to him. And then that leads me to the second thing, and this is something for us to think about. Could you imagine what it would be like to be in Saul's position, where you're searching for answers from God, but he's not giving them to you. He's not speaking to you. Now, clearly, our situations are not exactly parallel. I'm not asking the Lord, hey, should I go fight in this battle against the Philistines? And will you be with me when I go try to kill these people? And God says, yes, go do it. I'm with you. Okay, I know our situations are not parallel. God's not talking to us about such things in the way that he did in the Old Testament. God had reasons for communicating with people the way that he did throughout history. But here's what I want to say from that. Could you imagine being in a place where you had serious questions about life and what you should do and how you should live and what you should be, and you have no way to get God's insight about those questions? How do we get insight from God today? Through the Scriptures. But could you imagine if none of us had Scriptures? Could you imagine what life would be like if none of us had a Bible? Think about how many choices you make every day that are directly affected by your knowledge of the Scriptures. Think about how many things you do every week, every month. And you do those things because the Scripture tells you to do them and you know the Scriptures. But could you imagine not having the Scriptures? How hard would life be if you didn't have a word from the Lord? How much would we wander about in the darkness if God wasn't speaking to us? Right? Think about that and how you would feel if you had no guidance, no direction from God, and you say, man, that would be terrible. I would be so confused and worried and anxious all the time. That's how Saul feels. So, what's he going to do? In verse 7, he says to his servants, seek for me a woman who is a medium, that I may go to her and inquire of her. And his servants know of one who is up in Endor. Now, this is why we're reminded of the second thing in verse 3, that Saul had cast out all of the mediums and the spiritists. It's going to be hard for him to find one because he has pushed all of them out. But there is one that his servants know of. And so we're not going to read this whole text. I'm sure there's lots of things y'all may want to discuss. Saul disguises himself in verse 8, takes two people with him, goes up to that woman in Endor and says, I want you to conjure up someone from the dead. Who do you want me to bring up for you? And he calls for Samuel. And she pushes back and she says, now you know what King Saul did to people like me. And if I do this, my life is in danger. How do can you promise me that nothing is going to happen? And Saul, who at this point in the conversation is still disguised, he says, I promise you nothing will happen to you. And so she is going to work her quote unquote magic, and she's going to bring Samuel back from the dead. So let me just finish going through the story, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about your questions that I'm sure you have, because I have them too. So Verse 11, the woman said, whom shall I bring up for you? And he said, bring up Samuel for me. So when the woman saw Samuel, she cried out with a loud voice. Does your translation say something different? She cried out with a loud voice. Does it say anything different? At the top of her voice, okay. The idea there is, she screamed, like she was startled at what she saw. When she saw Samuel, she screamed. Now, I'm not going to illustrate that for you because I have a microphone on. But then something happens that makes her realize this is King Saul. that I'm talking to. She is able to figure that out. I don't exactly know what it was. I think I could make some inferences, perhaps. She clearly recognized Samuel. Everybody in Israel knew who Samuel was. Now, maybe she simply doesn't know Saul because it says he disguised himself, but she figures it out, maybe because of the way Saul reacted to Samuel, maybe because of things that were said that we don't have recorded here. I don't know exactly, but she was able to put that together. And so in verse 12, she says, "Why have you deceived me? You are Saul." Great, now I'm dead. You're the man that cast out all of the people like me. Saul has already given her his word. But the king says to her in verse 13, "Do not be afraid. I'm not going to hurt you. What do you see?" The woman said to Saul, "I see a divine being coming up out of the earth." It's interesting word that's used there. I see a God, little g, coming up out of the earth. I like the New American Standard rendering, a divine being. A spirit being is really the idea. Not a divine being in the sense of this is true divinity, this is God, big G, but a spiritual being is coming forth. In other words, not a human, right? Doesn't look like us, doesn't have flesh and blood and bones and all that. Now, Samuel is going to come up, and he says in verse 15, "Why have you disturbed me by bringing me up?" And Saul answered, "The Philistines are waging war against me. God has departed from me. He no longer answers me. What should I do?" Samuel, verse 16, "Why then do you ask me, since the Lord has departed from you and has become your adversary?" I love this question. Saul, if God is not answering you, you have much bigger problems than the Philistines coming out against you. Why are you calling upon me? If God is not going to answer you, why do you think I'm in a position or place that I should? Now, Samuel reminds Saul of what he said to him. Chapter 28, verse 17. "The Lord has torn the kingdom out of your hand. He's given it to your neighbor, to David. As you did not obey the Lord and did not execute his fierce wrath on Amalek, so the Lord has done this thing to you this day. Moreover, the Lord will give over Israel along with you into the hands of the Philistines, and tomorrow you and your sons will be with me." Meaning, you'll be dead. You'll be in the realm of the dead. You'll be a spirit like me. "Indeed, the Lord will give over the army of Israel into the hands of the Philistines." Okay. I want to make a couple of comments that I think are of interest, and then I'll turn it over to you for your questions. The first thing I want you to see is that Samuel places everything that has happened to Saul squarely on what happened in 1 Samuel 15. When Saul was told to utterly destroy the Amalekites, and he deliberately disobeyed God. It's like Samuel looks back and says, "Saul, that was the turning point. That was the time when everything started to go off course for you. And I'm going to remind you of what I said to you on that occasion, that the Lord has taken the kingdom away from you because of your deliberate disobedience. That started you down a bad path, and look how far you have come." Okay? I really want to emphasize this point. We've been tracking Saul's digression for a long time. This chapter shows us just how far he has fallen. Not only is he offering a sacrifice that he's not supposed to, chapter 13. Not only does he destroy most all of the cattle and the sheep and in chapter 15, and most of the Amalekites except one. Okay, yeah. I'm not minimizing his mistakes there, but look at how far he has fallen. Saul knows there are deliberate texts in the law of Moses that say have nothing to do with mediums and spiritists and conjurers. Don't have anything to do with them. He knows that. He cast them out of the land. And yet now he reads in the law of Moses, have nothing to do with mediums and spiritists. Oh, well, I'm just going to go consult one anyways. Wow. This is seriously a precipitous fall for King Saul. All right? Now here's the second thing I want you to see. Go back to chapter 15. Keep your marker right here. This is fascinating to me. I've never made this connection before until I was preparing for this. Go back to chapter 15 when Saul fails to obey God with the Amalekites and he doesn't destroy Agag and so forth. All right, verse 22, Samuel said, has the Lord as much delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as he does in obeying the voice of the Lord? Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice, and to heed is better than the fat of rams. For rebellion, which is what Saul has done, right? He has rebelled against God's instruction. For rebellion is as the sin of divination, witchcraft. Saul, there is no fundamental difference between rebellion and witchcraft. Both are evil, both are terrible. And what is it, lo and behold, in chapter 28 that Saul resorts to? Witchcraft. Isn't that interesting? Almost prophetic, right? The way that Samuel interacts with him in chapter 15. Okay, I've got more to say about this episode with the witch, but I know y'all have some things you want to say too, so let's hear it. Glenn?
He goes from disobeying a little bit, still trying to jump in both feet.
Yes, yeah, that's right. Just jump in the deep end. Right, that's good. That's right. Lance?
I think that she probably had some sort of power of the Spirit, but also kind of a con artist. I don't think she ever had something as real as this with Samuel. And I think that's why she's screaming. She probably wasn't actually expecting Samuel to come up. And I think whenever she realized it, she's like, wait, like maybe this is actually the king. I think that's why she recognized it.
I agree with you. I think she screamed the way she did because she didn't actually expect Samuel to come from the dead. I think so. And just if you're wondering, I'll tell you, I don't think this woman had any actual powers to do this. I think she was a fake. She was a pretender. And God made this happen so that Samuel could get one final message to King Saul. That's my opinion on that. I know there's a lot of differences of thought about it, but that's where I am on this. God worked a miracle here. And yeah, he did it through or utilizing the circumstances with this fake, diviner. I don't think she actually had any real power to do that. I think God is the one who brought Samuel back in this way. You may differ with me on that. What else do you see in the story that you think is worth commenting on? Oh, wow. No. You two need to be quiet. Yep. All right, Austin. Okay, so Austin brings out, Saul doesn't react in the way that the witch did. And maybe we can attribute that to Saul actually believed in this woman's ability. He thought she was the real thing. And so she was able to do that. But again, I think her surprise indicates, even she knows she's not the real thing, right? Like in Acts 8, Simon the magician, when he saw what the apostles did, he said, hey, that's the real thing. I'm just tricking people with magic. That's the real thing. Okay, Aubrey?
I interpreted it was she screamed in surprise when she realized it was Saul. Like the timing wise, to me, I'm not saying I disagree with your guys' statements, but timing wise, it just makes more sense to me if she was screaming in surprise at the fact that it was Saul. And maybe when Samuel specifically came out, there was something that kind of registered for the crap, that's Saul. He's killed and managed all my people. I need to get out of here,
Right. And there could be something with that. I think I put more on the expression at the beginning of verse 12. When she saw Samuel, she cried out with a loud voice, right? But I don't think you're wrong, though, in that when she figured out that it was King Saul, she was afraid, as she should have been, right? Because of what he had done previously. Kelly?
Well, I think we need to be careful to just assume that she was a liar, whether she was or not. Obviously, there was something to witchcraft
Yes. Yeah, and I think that's a good point. I think that's worth considering. Clearly, the condemnation for these kinds of behaviors, it comes from somewhere, right? I do think, though, that, the book, the Waldron book has some discussion of this at length. I think it's page 44 if you haven't read that yet. But he talks about in there that while we do read about evil spirits throughout the Scriptures, primarily though in the Gospels, we don't read of them performing miracles. We don't read of them doing things like this. We read of them overtaking people and affecting people's thoughts and behaviors, but we don't read about miraculous kinds of things taking place through them. And I think that's worth factoring into this story. I'm not sure that directly answers everything, but Wayne?
I think it might be of value to think about all the other things that we've seen going on here, where even Saul's kinsmen left him, warriors left him, and put into thought with this woman's recognition of Samuel that the public was somewhat aware of the fact that God had left Saul.
Yes.
Many of them were probably, many maybe were not, but maybe the more educated were. For this woman to recognize him as who he was immediately tells me she understood.
Okay.
Maybe others did.
Yeah. Word is getting out, is what we would say, right? That Saul is not where he should be, and people are seeing it. Yeah.
He had turned against God.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, good. All right, so let's finish up some things here. In chapter 28, went too far. Chapter 28, verse 20. Saul immediately fell full length upon the ground and was very afraid because of the words of Samuel. And there was no strength in him. He'd eaten no food all day and all night. Then the witch and his servants encourage him to eat, and he takes strength again. I think the wording of verse 20 is interesting. Saul is afraid not because he saw a disembodied spirit. He was afraid because of what Samuel said. And I think, again, that kind of reinforces for me, this is God working here. Samuel comes with this final prophetic message. And he says, basically, if you think about it this way, Saul, God's words have not changed. This is what I said to you long ago, and nothing has changed. In fact, your behavior has only reinforced what God said long ago. All right. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate your attention.